The president of Pakistan has tonight already blamed al-Qaeda. Another prominent political figure of that nation had already twice blamed in advance the president of Pakistan. Benazir Bhutto, weeks after her return from exile in Dubai, had written in a well-circulated letter that President Pervez Musharraf had reduced security measures for her, not increased them, and that were she to be killed, she would consider Musharraf to be responsible. Our third story on the countdown, from Pakistan's critical position in the fight against international terrorism to the injection of the assassination into the American presidential campaign, few are as qualified to assess the varied ramifications as is Senator Chris Dodd of Connecticut, who will join us in a moment. First, the facts as we know them as sunrise looms in Pakistan. The former prime minister turned Democratic opposition leader, Mrs. Bhutto, assassinated in the city of Rawalpindi after this political rally, the second attempt on her life since she left exile in the fall and returned to challenge the government of Pakistani President Musharraf. Bhutto apparently shot by a suicide bomber as she stood in her SUV to wave to the crowd, the assassin then blowing up himself along with dozens of others. The precise cause of the former prime minister's death not immediately confirmed. Her death plunging Pakistani cities into chaos, as well as the nation's parliamentary elections scheduled 12 days hence, not to mention Bush administration policy in the region, and of course, most ominously, Pakistan's nuclear weapons. As promised, Senator Chris Dodd joins us from Des Moines, a week out from the Iowa caucuses, in which he, of course, is standing as a candidate for the Democratic nomination. Senator, great thanks for your time tonight.
Thank you, Keith, very much. Welcome back.
Thank you. First off, from your vantage point as a senior member on Senate Foreign Relations, what does this country do about what has happened in Pakistan today?
Well, first of all, they've lost a great leader. I've known Benazir Bhutto about 20 years. In fact, I spoke with her just 2 or 3 weeks ago, and we had talked with each other, emailed back and forth. We had issued some strong statements urging Musharraf to lift martial law and set the elections, as you pointed out, on January 8th. And so I've lost a good friend, but Pakistan has lost a remarkable leader. The United States has lost a very good friend, and the region now is in a more precarious position than at any time in recent memory here this evening. It's very important, I think, that the Bush administration and others be doing everything we can to create as much stability in the midst of this chaos, which you very appropriately described here. The nuclear weapons are the big issue, and I think you've referenced this already, Keith. This is more important than anything else. I noticed today that Governor Bill Richardson suggested that Musharraf ought to step down and that we ought to cut off aid to Pakistan. I can't think of a worse scenario at this particular point. General Musharraf is no Thomas Jefferson. We all know that. But the idea of getting rid of him without knowing what would replace him, putting someone in charge of that nuclear arsenal in the middle of this kind of chaos, I think could be a very, very dangerous step for Pakistan and for us at this juncture. So stability is key. I think postponing the elections are going to be absolutely critical at this point. The PPP party, Ms. Bhutto's party here, really has no apparent heir to her that could run as a candidate. So providing some period of time here before those elections should actually occur is probably the wise thing to be doing. And then lastly, I think here, obviously, we need to offer whatever help we can to determine who is responsible for the assassination today. It's an extraordinary position and how complicated things are in Pakistan when you hear an extraordinary advocate of democracy such as yourself say we need breathing room and that these elections should not occur as scheduled. I do, and I say that regretfully, but if they were to go forward on January 8th here, there is no clear candidate, and Mrs. Bhutto was the most popular political figure in the country. Arguably, General Musharraf is the least popular figure in the country here, and therefore you have a boycott already been suggested by the former Prime Minister Shamir. So these elections I don't think would mean much at all at this juncture, and to try and conduct them in this environment probably would not work at all. So I think a delay is a wise step for them to take at this point. Whatever breathing room that would provide, and the reality of the political situation here where we're a week away from the Iowa caucuses, but we're a year and nearly 4 weeks until the next presidential inauguration, everything happening in Pakistan is not going to wait for our 44th president to be sworn in. It looks like we've wasted at least part of $5 billion in counterterrorism efforts in aid to Pakistan. We're no closer to bin Laden now than we were in early 2001, and the Pakistanis have a share in that at the least. Musharraf suspended democracy. Now he's basically locked the country down, and the leading pro-democracy spokesman is dead. In all that context, is Musharraf still a long-term answer, or why is President Bush and this country standing behind him, and what does the president have to do right now? Well, it's the devil you know and the devil you don't know. And again, this is a country that has a nuclear arsenal capable of causing devastation tomorrow. It's not a question such as Iran, where it may be 5 or 10 years down the road, or Iraq, which doesn't have any weapons at all, as we now have learned. But this country has them. And in the wrong hands here, could destabilize the entire region, given the history between Pakistan and India, the access to Afghanistan and the importance of what's going on there. This is not a long-term answer, clearly. But in the interim here, the short-term answer is not to be looking for an answer. We don't know who would have the control of those weapons and what it could mean. And clearly, there are those who benefit from the events here today. And certainly, while we don't know whether or not al-Qaeda was responsible, it certainly looks as though they're the ones who would probably benefit the most from this level of chaos, where they could possibly emerge here with a radical fundamentalist state in control of those weapons. So it's very important right now that we have a mature, sober response to this without jumping too quickly to an answer here that we don't know what that would mean. And that's what I'm concerned about. But I'm not arguing for a Musharraf long-term answer. I'm merely buying some time here until we sort this out.
Senator, us laymen don't have to know very much about Pakistan to know the highlights, if you will. 60 years of independence, 60 years in which politics and violence have seldom been separated there. Could Benazir Bhutto really have led some kind of coalition? And is there anybody left in that country who could take out those cudgels, who could lead to some sort of middle path?
Well, I think she could have, and this is one area where they were late to this, the idea of having some sort of a coalition between Musharraf and his party and Benazir Bhutto and her party, I think offered some real hope, where she would have emerged as a prime minister, providing that transitional period we're talking about. I don't know if anyone can give you the answer to your second part of your question, Keith, here. I don't know of anyone on the immediate horizon. I don't think Shamir provides that kind of alternative at this juncture. All the more reason why we've got to be very careful how we proceed here. As you pointed out, Musharraf has already faced, I think, 4 or 5 assassination attempts on his life. Benazir Bhutto lost both of her brothers by assassination. Her father was hung by General Zia. Here, we've had one coup after another. This is a very, very destabilized situation. And at the end of all of it, again, we're talking about a nuclear arsenal controlled by the military in Pakistan. It's very important that those relationships be maintained. Thus, I think while I understand people's temptation to want to cut off aid here, that could be just the tipping point for us where we end up losing our ability to influence and very well may find out people in control of those weapons who could do a lot of damage to us and to other allies of ours around the world.
Senator, let me ask you one last question, then we'll let you go with our thanks. Most of the Republicans running for president were quick to blame the assassination today on al-Qaeda and interject it to a large degree into their campaigns today. Mr. Giuliani says it shows how we have to win the war against the terrorists, and Mitt Romney said it was another example of radical jihadism. Is there a difference in the way Republicans and Democrats have been looking at Pakistan and are looking at this right now?
Well, I welcome them, their concern about Pakistan, but this is the same crowd that continues to fan the flames that we need to stay in Iraq militarily here. We've had our eye on the wrong ball here. We've been deeply involved at $10 billion a month in Iraq. We're not paying attention to the more serious problem. For weeks, I've suggested that Pakistan was a far more delicate situation than either Iraq or Iran, and yet these supporters of the Bush policy in Iraq have been engaging in that particular effort here, disregarding the serious problems being posed inside Pakistan. So I would suggest here that we better get back to the Pakistan-Afghanistan issue rather quickly here. That's the epicenter of terrorism here, not suggesting we maintain the military presence that we have in Iraq. That's a dangerous policy in my view.
Senator Chris Dodd of Connecticut and the Senate Foreign Relations Committee taking some time from the campaign trail to join us from Des Moines. Senator, once again, thanks for your time. Have a good night.
Thank you, Keith.